What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we're going to be going over the best items to spend your permanent unlock tokens on if you plan on progressing through the prestige system. Because every time you prestige, all of your class items get locked and you have to level up and unlock them again. With a couple exceptions here, and that's what I want to talk about first. This is the fact that this time around with this prestige system in Black Ops 6, if you have a blueprint or a skin for an item like a gun or even a piece of equipment, that will immediately permanently unlock that item as well, and therefore you'd be wasting a permanent unlock token on those things if you're going to be getting them anyway. So my first recommendation here, if you are planning to prestige before Season 1 launches for instance, I'd recommend staying away from using permanent unlock tokens, at least on guns at this stage, until we see what the Season 1 Battle Pass looks like, because Battle Passes tend to include blueprints for weapons, and if you're going to be progressing through that battle pass and unlocking those blueprints, then in that case, you're also permanently unlocking that item, and it would be sort of a waste at this point to use a permanent unlock token on those guns. Additionally, just a reminder, if you didn't get the Vault Edition of the game, you're able to get blueprints for the exact same guns in the campaign as what we have in the Vault Edition. And this means just by completing the campaign, you can unlock these guns permanently, and therefore I wouldn't waste a permanent unlock token on these as well. And these include the Ames 85, the Marine SP, the LR762, the Jackal PDW, and the knife. So that's the first big consideration you want to make when it comes to permanent unlock tokens. The next thing I want to talk about before we get into this list that is very important to point out as well that many people aren't aware of is our progression between level 1 and level 55. It's not linear. So the amount of XP required to get from level 1 to level 2 is basically nothing compared to the amount of XP that's required to get from level 54 to level 55. It steadily increases over time. And while we don't have the exact XP values per level for Black Ops 6, we do have those values for Black Ops 2, and I assume we're at least following a roughly similar curve here, so I'm confident this should at least roughly apply to what we're seeing in Black Ops 6. But with this, an interesting fact is 50% of your XP to get from level 1 to level 55 is earned between level 1 and level 41. The additional 50% is just those last 14 levels, which is pretty crazy, and we can divide that up a little bit further here. You can see that 25% of your XP throughout a prestige is earned between level 0 and 31, and 25% is not that bad. And as a result, when it comes to choosing your permanent unlocks, you typically want to focus on items that are in that later 50%, so level 41 and beyond. However, I would also say it's reasonable to select some items between level 31 and level 41 if they're items that you really use a lot and you really don't want to be missing out on. But with all of this in mind, let's get into my list here. Keeping in mind this is in order, although the order may change over time as the game evolves and also as my understanding of things evolve over time with the game. But as of right now, the number one permanent unlock that I would highly recommend for everybody, I don't care who you are, if you're playing multiplayer, your first permanent unlock should be the Perk Greed wildcard. And the reason behind this is not only is it an extremely late unlock at level 54, but it's also one of the most versatile items that you can unlock in the entire game. If you're unaware, when using this wildcard, it allows you to select a fourth perk, and that fourth perk can be from any one of the tiers. So that now allows you to use multiple perks from the same tier. That's the first benefit. And another big benefit is with the combat specialty system where you have to match up 3 perks of the same color to get a combat specialty. Without the Perk Greed wildcard, you're very limited in what you can select. Whereas with the Perk Greed wildcard, that allows you to select 1 additional perk, and it doesn't matter what color that is as long as the other 3 are matching colors, and you'll still be able to get the specialty. So if I want the Recon specialty, but I really want Flak Jacket as well, Perk Greed is the only way that I can make that happen. And I honestly can't think of any item in this game, regardless of the level unlock, that's as valuable as the Perk Greed wildcard. And then when you combine that with the fact that it's unlocked at level 54, this is an absolute no-brainer that you should 100% be going for. As for my second permanent unlock token, this is something where I still need to do a bit more testing, but now that I've had more playtime with the game, I'm pretty confident that I'm going to want Ninja on a lot of my class setups. Which is unfortunate, but the footsteps are just too easy to pinpoint in this game, in my opinion. Especially if you find yourself in the higher skilled lobbies where everybody's got a headset and they really know how to use them effectively. So as a result, even though Ninja is only unlocked at level 35, it's not one of those last 50% unlocks throughout a prestige. I just feel it's such an important item to at least have available to potentially use if you do find yourself in a lobby like that, so you at least have the ability to swap over to that. On a similar note, for number 3 on my list, we've got Tac Mask. This one is a fairly late unlock. You don't get it until level 44, And if you find yourself in one of those lobbies where you're just getting flashed or stunned constantly over and over again, well, it really sucks if you don't have access to Tac Mask, and with it being unlocked at level 44, that'll be a huge portion of your prestige where you're not able to use this unless you use a permanent unlock token. And just a reminder, with perks, there are no blueprints, so there's no other method of permanently unlocking these, and that's why you are going to be seeing a good amount of perks on this list. After that though, for number 4 on my list, we're going to get away from perks a little bit, and I'm going to be going with the Harp Score Streak. Because this one is unlocked at level 42, and it can be a very beneficial streak for your team, as well as yourself, and especially if you want to go on those really big streaks, maybe try to get a nuke, for instance. It's going to make that a whole lot easier. At the time of recording this video, the harp is kind of bugged out, and the arrows are not always pointing in the exact direction the enemy is looking at like it should be. But I think by the time many of us are getting to our like 4th or 5th prestige, that bug should hopefully be taken care of by then. After that, for number 5 on my list, at level 33, we have the Gunfighter wildcard. And while this one isn't a particularly late unlock, it is quite an important item because it allows us to use our builds with 8 attachments on them. And it would be nice to not be locked out of being able to use those builds for the first 25% or so of our prestige progress. After that, we have Forward Intel, which I may end up shuffling and bringing that one a little bit forward, depending on how much I end up enjoying it. But with Forward Intel, you get that zoomed out minimap, which is very nice to have. And it's a fairly late unlock at level 47, so I do feel it deserves a spot on this list. Next on my list here, we've got Cold-Blooded, and this one's unlocked at level 41, and this is the one that will hide you from enemy score streaks. And I would say when it comes to this one, I would shuffle this around depending on what your usual experience in game tends to be. If you find yourself often on the team that has a bunch of lethal streaks called in against them, then you may want to permanently unlock Cold-Blooded a bit earlier on in your prestige, so you always have that available to pop on when you notice that the enemies start calling in all these streaks. If you don't run into that situation too often, maybe you party up all the time and therefore the enemy team doesn't often get streaks against you, then you might not even want to permanently unlock this at all. After that one, we have the earliest unlock that's on the list here. This is the Stim Shot at level 30. And I know, it doesn't take that long to get from level 1 to level 30, but I also really like the Stim Shot, and I do feel it is going to become a bit of a crutch for me, at least on a lot of my more aggressive class setups, like my SMG setups. And especially once I've already got all of my other bases covered that we've covered in this video, I think at that point it'll be reasonable enough for me to spend my permanent unlock token on a Stim Shot. Then for number 9 on my list, I've got the Dreadnought, largely because this is just such a late unlock at level 54. And I don't want to be completely locked out of using that for basically all 10 of my prestiges outside of the brief period of time where I'm between level 54 and level 55. And number 10, I want to keep open a little bit, and it really just depends on what blueprints we'll have available by the time we get to that point. But on this, I have the AS Val, GPM-G7, Compact 92, and the Goblin Mark II. So essentially, I'm likely going to pick one of these, assuming there's still no blueprint available for these guns at that point. Especially with the AS Val, that's a level 55 unlock. It is the latest unlock in the entire game, and I may even bump this up and use a permanent unlock token earlier. If I find out there's no AS Val blueprint in the Season 1 Battle Pass, I might want to have that permanently unlocked early on, so I'm not stuck only having one level before I'm prestiging using the AS Val. So even though I have that general rule of thumb of not using permanent unlock tokens on weapons because of that blueprint ability, that doesn't mean that I'll never consider maybe using one on one of those later weapon unlocks. And that's my list. Those are the top 10 items that I would definitely recommend looking into if you're a bit confused about what you should be spending your permanent unlock token on. Like I said, number 1 should absolutely be perk greed for everyone, and everything else beyond that, it's really just going to come down to your personal preference, your playstyle, and what your general experience tends to be like in the game. And this is where I'm curious to hear from you guys in those comments down below. What did you think about my list of permanent unlocks? And are there any things that you would change? Are there any items that you're planning on spending a permanent unlock token on that weren't on my list today? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.